First contact under fire. High Counselor Zexor's tendrils writhed in distress as she studied the holographic displays floating before her in the Confederation's Emergency Response Center. Another medical facility had gone dark, its staff succumbing to the same mysterious plague that had already claimed 17 worlds. The quarantine protocols that had protected the Confederation for millennia were failing. "Report," she commanded, her crystalline voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Chief Medical Officer Ven 8 stepped forward, his environmental suit gleaming under the harsh lights. "The situation continues to deteriorate, High Counselor. The plague adapts faster than our strongest containment measures. Traditional treatments are ineffective, and our best genetic engineers can't keep pace with its mutations." The plague had appeared 6 standard months ago on a remote mining outpost. Initially, the Confederation's medical authorities had been confident in their ability to contain it. They had defeated countless pandemics before, after all. But this was different. The plague seemed to anticipate their every countermeasure, evolving to bypass their most sophisticated medical technologies. High Counselor called out First Contact Specialist Thex, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with excitement. "Our deep space surveys have detected a previously unknown civilization in Sector 7. They appear to be pre-FTL, but..." They hesitated. "Speak freely, Specialist. Their biological readings are unlike anything we've ever seen. Their world, they call it Earth, would be classified as a death world by our standards. Extreme temperature variations, high gravity, dangerous radiation levels, and aggressive pathogens everywhere. Yet they've not only survived but built a thriving civilization." Zexor's inner eyes narrowed. "How is this relevant to our current crisis?" "Their medical database is extraordinary. They've survived countless plagues throughout their history, developing natural immunities to diseases that would devastate most species. Their medical knowledge is primitive by our standards, but they understand disease evolution and adaptation in ways we never considered." Before Zexor could respond, another alert flashed across the displays. The plague had reached Centauri Prime, one of the Confederation's core worlds. Millions would be at risk within days. "Specialist Thex, prepare a first contact team immediately. Chief Medical Officer Ven 8, you will accompany them. If there's even a chance these humans might help, we must take it." The first contact team arrived in Earth orbit just as humanity was making its first tentative steps into the solar system. Their arrival caused initial panic, but Earth's governments quickly organized a response team led by Dr. Sarah Chen, the World Health Organization's head of pandemic response. The humans surprised the Confederation team immediately. When informed of the plague's severity, they didn't retreat in fear. Instead, Dr. Chen requested samples for immediate study, despite the risks. "Your containment protocols are impressive," Ven 8 observed as Chen's team worked in their highest security lab. "But surely you realize how dangerous this pathogen is." Chen smiled behind her hazmat suit's faceplate. "Dangerous, yes, but Earth's history is written in plagues and pandemics. Every major disease outbreak taught us something new. We learned to adapt, to think like the pathogens we fought. Sometimes the most effective solutions come from understanding your enemy intimately." Within hours, Chen's team had mapped the plague's genetic structure. Within days, they had identified its adaptation mechanisms eerily similar to diseases Earth scientists had fought for centuries. "It's not just about having the right technology," Chen explained to an astonished Ven 8. "It's about understanding how diseases think, how they evolve. On Earth, we've always been in an arms race with our pathogens. It made us stronger, forced us to be creative. The breakthrough came when Chen's team discovered something remarkable. Human immune systems naturally produced compounds that slowed the plague's adaptation rate. It wasn't a cure, but it was the first real hope the Confederation had seen. "We'll need to modify the compound for different species," Chen told the assembled Confederation representatives. "But we can do it. More importantly, we can teach you how we approach disease evolution. Sometimes the old ways, the hard ways, offer insights that advanced technology might miss. As Zexra watched the humans work tirelessly alongside her people, she realized they had discovered something far more valuable than a potential cure. They had found partners who understood struggle, who had been forged in the crucible of a harsh world, and emerged stronger. The plague was far from defeated, but for the first time since it appeared, hope illuminated the darkness. Humanity, born on a world that should have killed them, had instead been prepared by it for exactly this moment. The hidden cure. The Confederation's central research facility on New Genesis had never seen anything like Dr. Chen's team. While alien scientists worked behind layers of energy shields and automated systems, the humans moved with practiced efficiency in simple hazmat suits, directly handling samples of the plague. "They're insane," muttered lead researcher Ixtel, his crystalline form flickering with anxiety as he watched Dr. Chen extract another tissue sample. "One breach in those primitive suits and we'd handle it," interrupted Dr. James Rodriguez, Chen's deputy. "These suits may look primitive to you, but they're the product of centuries of trial and error. Sometimes simpler is better. Easier to spot problems, faster to fix them." The human approach to research was equally baffling to the Confederation scientists. While their advanced AI systems ran billions of simulations seeking a cure, the humans insisted on understanding the plague's basic biology first. "Your simulations are amazing," Chen acknowledged, studying a holographic model of the plague's protein structure. "But they're based on assumptions about how diseases should behave. This plague breaks those rules. We need to understand why." Working in shifts, the human team began mapping the plague's evolution across different species. They noticed patterns that the Confederation's AI had missed, patterns familiar to anyone who had studied Earth's most aggressive pathogens. "Look here," Chen pointed to a genetic sequence. "This adaptation mechanism, we've seen something similar in Earth's prion diseases. And this protein folding pattern reminds me of how certain viruses hijack immune responses." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's immunologist, had been studying blood samples from human volunteers exposed to trace amounts of the inactivated plague. "It's not just that we're resistant," she explained, excitement clear in her voice. "Our immune systems actually force the plague to evolve in predictable ways. We can use that to guide its mutations toward less lethal forms." The Confederation scientists were skeptical. Their entire approach to disease control relied on overwhelming force, using advanced technology to eliminate pathogens before they could adapt. The idea of deliberately guiding a disease's evolution seemed reckless. "Sometimes you have to work with nature, not against it," Rodriguez explained while setting up another experiment. "Earth taught us that the hard way. Every time we tried to completely eradicate a disease, it came back stronger. We learned to think differently." The human team worked around the clock, their enhanced physiology, evolved on a high-gravity world, allowing them to push through fatigue that would have crippled most species. They combined Confederation technology with Earth-based techniques, creating a hybrid approach that neither civilization could have developed alone. "It's like cooking," Chen told High Counselor Zexra during a progress briefing. "Your people have incredible tools, the equivalent of a molecular gastronomy kitchen. But sometimes you need the experience of someone who learned to cook over an open fire, who understands how ingredients interact at the most basic level." The first tests of their hybrid treatment showed promise. While not a complete cure, it forced the plague to evolve into less lethal forms, giving infected individuals a fighting chance. More importantly, it worked across different species, adapting to each unique biology. "We're not trying to kill it," Tanaka explained to a group of Confederation medical officers. "We're teaching your immune systems to guide it, to coexist with it in a less harmful form. It's how Earth's species survived countless plagues, not by winning every battle, but by adapting to fight the war differently." As news of the treatment's success spread, Confederation scientists began to see their human colleagues in a new light. What they had initially dismissed as primitive was actually a different kind of sophistication, born from millennia of survival on a world that never stopped trying to kill them. Perhaps, Ixtel admitted to Rodriguez as they prepared another batch of the treatment, there is something to be said for understanding the hard way of doing things. Your people's experiences on Earth, they gave you insights we never could have gained in our controlled environments. The treatment wasn't the end of their challenges, it was just the beginning. But humanity had shown the Confederation a new way forward, proving that sometimes the harshest conditions create the most innovative solutions. Trial by fire. The emergency alert came at 300 Earth Standard Time. Meridian, one of the Confederation's most densely populated core worlds, had reported its first plague cases. Within hours, the infection rates were climbing exponentially. Their environmental control systems worked against them, Dr. Chen explained to the crisis response team. The same perfectly regulated conditions that made life comfortable also gave the plague an ideal environment to spread. We need to move now. The Confederation Council was hesitant to deploy an untested treatment on such a scale, but they had run out of options. Meridian's automated medical systems were already overwhelmed, and conventional treatments were failing. We'll go, Chen announced, her team already gearing up. Your environmental systems may be failing, but our suits were designed for worse conditions. We can reach the patients your medical droids can't. High Counselor Zexer's tendrils twisted with concern. The atmospheric degradation in the quarantine zones, the radiation levels alone, are still lower than what we deal with in post-disaster zones on Earth, interrupted Dr. Rodriguez, checking his suit seals. We've trained for this. Let us help. The human medical team deployed to Meridian's capital city within hours. The sight that greeted them was like something from Earth's own pandemic histories. Streets empty except for emergency vehicles, medical alerts flashing on every building, the air itself hazy with decontamination fog. Reminds me of the Chennai outbreak, muttered Dr. Tanaka as they made their way to the central hospital. Same feeling of a city holding its breath. The hospital's environmental systems had failed completely. Most of the Confederation medical staff had been forced to evacuate, leaving only emergency medical droids to tend to the sick. The humans moved in immediately, their rugged hazmat suits allowing them to work in conditions that would have been lethal to most species. Start with the critical cases, Chen ordered, setting up their mobile treatment center. Rodriguez, get our atmospheric processors running. Tanaka, start adapting the treatment doses for local biology. Move. The humans worked tirelessly. Their bodies evolved to handle Earth's punishing gravity, allowing them to keep going long after most species would have collapsed from exhaustion. They moved from patient to patient, administering the treatment, monitoring responses, adjusting protocols on the fly. Your people are remarkable, admitted Medical Director BX-17, watching from the hospital's shielded command center. We would never have thought to deliberately expose ourselves like this. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty, Chen replied, adjusting a patient's treatment dose. Theory is good, but there's no substitute for direct experience. The first signs of improvement came after 36 hours. Patients who received the treatment were stabilizing, their bodies learning to guide the plague's evolution toward less lethal forms. More importantly, the infection rate in treated areas began to slow. But the human team's success came with a cost. Despite their enhanced physiology and protective gear, the intense radiation and toxic atmosphere began to take their toll. Dr. Patel collapsed after 48 hours, her suit showing signs of radiation damage. Others showed symptoms of extreme fatigue and exposure. You need to rest, insisted VX-17 as Chen swayed on her feet while preparing another treatment batch. Your bodies, remarkable as they are, will hold, Chen interrupted firmly. We're not stopping while people need help. This is nothing compared to what our ancestors faced. They didn't have protective suits or advanced medical knowledge. They just had determination and the will to survive. That determination paid off. After 72 hours of continuous effort, the crisis on Meridian began to turn. The plague's spread slowed, then stopped. Patients were recovering. The human team's treatment protocol, combined with their ability to work in conditions too dangerous for most species, had saved millions. "I don't understand," Vex-17 confessed as the emergency finally began to abate. "Your methods seem so primitive compared to ours. Direct contact, manual adjustments, physical presence. Yet you succeeded where our most advanced systems failed." Chen smiled tiredly, her face pale from radiation exposure, but her eyes bright. "That's because we learned medicine the hard way, through centuries of plagues and disasters. Your technology is incredible, but sometimes you need the perspective of a species that had to fight for every advancement, every cure." As news of Meridian's recovery spread throughout the Confederation, humanity's reputation transformed. What had once been seen as a primitive species from a death world was now recognized as something else: survivors, healers, warriors against death itself. The price of victory. The success on Meridian marked a turning point, but the greater challenge lay ahead. Dozens of worlds still battled the plague, and millions more remained at risk. The Confederation's sophisticated distribution networks had been compromised, leaving traditional supply routes useless. "We need to think bigger," Dr. Chen told the Emergency Council. Her face was gaunt from weeks of work, radiation burns still healing on her exposed skin. Every inhabited world needs the treatment, and they need it now. The logistics seemed impossible. The Confederation's automated medical ships couldn't operate in plague-compromised environments, and their crews couldn't survive the hazardous conditions. That's when humanity showed its true strength, not just in resilience, but in numbers. Earth's governments had been monitoring the crisis. When the call for volunteers went out, the response was overwhelming. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, emergency responders. Millions stepped forward, ready to face conditions that other species considered unsurvivable. "This is what we do," explained Captain Maria Santos, commanding one of the converted Earth cargo ships. "When disaster strikes, humans don't wait for perfect conditions. We go in and help, whatever the cost." The human fleet was crewed by Confederation standards. Retrofitted cargo vessels, modified research ships, even converted oil tankers, anything that could carry medical supplies and personnel. They launched in waves, each ship crewed by volunteers who knew they were flying into danger. Dr. Rodriguez coordinated from the central command ship, directing teams to the hardest-hit areas. "We're seeing radiation levels triple what we expected in the Orion sector," he reported. "Environmental systems are completely down on at least 7 worlds. Divert teams 3 through 7 to Orion," Chen ordered. "Their suits can handle the radiation longest. Team 12, reroute to the Carina system. They need the atmospheric processing units more." The human medical teams worked in conditions that shocked their Confederation allies. They trudged through toxic atmospheres, braved radiation storms, and fought through environmental hazards that their protective gear was never designed to handle. When suits failed, they patched them. When equipment broke, they improvised repairs. "Your people are dying," protested High Counselor Zexra as reports of human casualties began to mount. "The radiation exposure alone is a price we're willing to pay," interrupted Dr. Tanaka, her own radiation badges showing dangerous levels. "Every human here volunteered knowing the risks. We have a saying on Earth: the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. We won't do nothing." The human approach to distribution was equally shocking to Confederation observers. While their systems relied on perfect sterility and controlled conditions, humans adapted to local situations. They set up treatment centers in damaged buildings, used local materials to improvise equipment, and trained local medical staff, even as they administered treatments. "It's not pretty," admitted Dr. Patel, supervising a makeshift clinic on a mining world. "But it works. Sometimes good enough now is better than perfect too late." The cost was high. Hundreds of human medical workers suffered severe radiation exposure. Thousands more experienced long-term health effects from toxic atmospheres and hazardous conditions. Some didn't survive at all. But they succeeded. World by world, system by system, the plague retreated. The human treatment protocol, combined with their ability to work in conditions too dangerous for most species, turned the tide. More importantly, they left behind knowledge, teaching local medical teams how to handle crises when technology alone wasn't enough. "I never understood your species' obsession with backups and redundancies," confessed Medical Director VX17 to Chen as they reviewed the latest recovery statistics. "Why plan for equipment failure when you can just build better equipment? Now I understand. You plan for failure because you've learned that anything can fail, and you need to be ready when it does." Chen nodded, looking at the memorial wall they'd started for fallen medical workers. "That's the lesson Earth taught us. It's not about having the best technology or the perfect solution. It's about being ready to keep fighting when everything goes wrong, about being willing to pay the price to help others." As the emergency response phase wound down, the Confederation began to understand what humanity had really brought to the galaxy. Not just a treatment for the plague, but a new way of thinking about crisis and survival. They had demonstrated that sometimes the strongest medicine comes not from perfect technology, but from the will to keep fighting no matter the cost. A new dawn. 1 year after the plague's first appearance, the Confederation's Grand Medical Academy looked very different. Between the gleaming towers of advanced research facilities, new buildings had sprung up. Environmental simulation chambers designed to train medical teams in harsh conditions, emergency response centers built to human specifications, and hybrid treatment facilities that combined the best of both worlds. Dr. Chen stood before the graduating class of the first Joint Human Confederation Medical Program. The auditorium was filled with beings from across the galaxy, including a significant number of humans who had chosen to remain after the crisis. "The plague taught us all something important," she began, her radiation scars visible but faded. "It showed us that true medical advancement isn't just about having the most sophisticated technology. It's about understanding how to adapt when that technology fails." The changes went far beyond medical training. The Confederation had begun incorporating human emergency protocols into their planetary defense systems. Every major medical facility now maintained primitive backup systems, mechanical ventilators, chemical sterilizers, and basic protective gear that could function without power or advanced technology. "Your people changed everything," High Counselor Zexera told Dr. Rodriguez during the Academy's opening ceremony. "We had grown too dependent on our technology, too confident in our ability to control every variable. You showed us another way." The human approach to medical research had also transformed Confederation science. While they still used their advanced AI and simulation systems, they now complemented them with practical experimentation and hands-on testing. The hybrid approach led to breakthroughs in treating diseases that had puzzled their medical experts for centuries. "It's like having two different sets of tools," explained Dr. Tanaka, now heading the Academy's Xenobiology department. "The Confederation's precision instruments are incredible for understanding the fine details, but sometimes you need Earth's hammer and chisel approach to break through to a new solution." Perhaps the most significant change was in how the Confederation viewed hostile environments. Instead of trying to perfect every condition, they began adapting to imperfection. New colonies included training facilities for harsh conditions. Emergency response teams learned to function when their technology failed. The lesson of human resilience had taken root. "We're seeing fascinating developments in evolutionary medicine," Dr. Paddle reported to the Confederation Medical Council. "By studying how Earth's species adapted to harsh conditions, we're discovering new approaches to treating genetic diseases. Sometimes the path through adversity leads to unexpected strength." The human medical teams who had fought the plague became legendary throughout Confederation space. Stories of their sacrifice and determination were taught in schools across the galaxy. But more importantly, their practical knowledge was preserved and shared. Every medical student now learned both the advanced techniques of Confederation medicine and the robust, adaptable approaches developed on Earth. It's not just about honoring their memory. Viv 17 explained to a group of new students standing before the memorial wall that had become a permanent installation. It's about understanding that sometimes the strongest healers are forged in the harshest conditions. Earth itself had changed too. As a full member of the Confederation, humanity gained access to advanced medical technology, but they never lost their connection to the practical, hands-on approaches that had saved the galaxy. Earth's medical schools became a unique hybrid, teaching students to leverage both high technology and basic survival skills. "We're creating something new," Chen told the Academy's board during their 5-year review. "Not just human medicine or Confederation medicine, but a true synthesis. We're learning from each other, growing stronger together." The plague had nearly destroyed civilization, but in doing so, it had forced an evolution. The Confederation learned the value of resilience and adaptability, while humanity gained the tools to spread their healing knowledge across the stars. Together, they had created a medical tradition that could face any crisis, whether with advanced technology or basic determination. In the end, Chen concluded her address to the graduating class. "The greatest cure we discovered wasn't for the plague. It was the understanding that true strength comes not from avoiding hardship, but from learning to face it together. That's the legacy we're building. Not just survival, but the wisdom to know that sometimes the hardest path leads to the greatest healing."